It's the Brad and John Show.
For Friday, January 24th, 2025. This is the C Block, which means we pick it up right around 7:40 or so, a little bit late this morning. Mention that because the fact for you, those of you who are listening in the future, we do the show live 7 to 8 o'clock Monday through Friday on Westplex Talk 104.5 and also streaming live on our Westplex Talk channel. That way you'll know the reference of this story. Okay. I think I have the clip, John, and I was wrong. It wasn't a congressional interview. Let me see if I can get this to play. This is the representative. His name is Tim Burchett, Burchett. Ready?
Do you agree with President Trump's decision to pardon these violent people and releasing them from jail?
If they were truly violent, no. But do I know that they were? I don't know that.
What do you mean you don't know that? We're showing the footage on the air right now. Congressman, you were there that day. There are offenders on January 6th who violently beat police officers. There are offenders who are convicted of seditious conspiracy. That is the truth. Do you agree?
No, you know what? That's not the right quote.
Yeah, and by the way, this is Jim having a rough night last night.
Hold on. Here we go. Hold on a minute. Here it is. You ready? Here we go.
This was night in the rut.
Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, here we go.
At the White House covering the first Trump administration when they had rioting outside of the White House. I mean, that was covered on CNN. What you're saying, this is not Fox, Congressman. You can't just spin a tail and pull the wool over people's eyes.
Yeah.
This is CNN. This is the news. We are asking you to come on and tell the truth.
And that's why more people are watching the Cartoon Network SpongeBob reruns right now, Jim. Look, I left the White House.
Did you hear that?
That's so good.
Oh, but see, here's the interesting thing. Here's Jim Acosta playing the "we're serious journalists here." Does anybody believe that anymore?
Yeah, probably not. And I think if you're still watching CNN, then you have a clear liberal bent, and you're watching them because they're telling you what you want to hear. It's like MSNBC viewers.
John, I can tell you, and this was probably, you were a young whippersnapper then, in the first Gulf War, I can tell you people were glued to their TV sets watching CNN because CNN turned the world of journalism on its ear by having these satellite uplink packs, these portable little satellite uplink packs. Now you can do it, with Elon Musk, with Starlink and the whole bit. But back in the day, it was like this equipment that were like in these road cases, and they would take it, and they were an engineer who would unfold this flexible satellite dish, and he'd set it up, and he'd align it to one of the satellites, and they could go live from practically any place on the face of the earth. And CNN was one of the very first users of this, and they put journalists on the ground in Baghdad, Iraq, are in the various places and things like that. Remember, there's the crazy story about this. Do you remember the story about what's his face who got kicked out of Iraq because of the fact that Geraldo Rivera? You know this crazy story with Geraldo Rivera?
No, I don't. I didn't know he got kicked out of Iraq.
Yes, he got kicked out of Iraq because of the fact that he was embedded with a combat team. Once again, they're doing a live remote broadcast, and this is when he was on CNN, I believe. He was doing a live remote broadcast from the battlefield in Iraq. He was actually embedded with a combat, and he was showing in the ground. He had like a stick or a pencil like that, and he'd say, well, here's where we are, and here's where the enemy is, and we're going to, and our troops are going to come around this side and attack. And the army said, dude, get out of Iraq because you're telling the enemy how we're going to attack them. Not going to go with that. But the point being, back in the day, CNN, everybody watched CNN. And during the first Iraq war, I can remember, I will never forget where I was actually working out at the Vic Tanny in Clayton's. That date me. That I think they tore down that building. It was on the parking lot of the old famous bar building. It was right next to the Forest Park Parkway. You know what I'm talking about, right? You know where the Vic Tanny was in Clayton?
Yeah, Bally's. Younger people will remember the Bally's, yeah.
Right, okay. Back in the day, it was Vic Tanny. And they had TV sets in one of the rooms where they did aerobics or whatever the thing was back then, where the women put on the let's get physical little leggings and things like that. Okay, and Norman Schwarzkopf, the general, you know who Norman Schwarzkopf was? You remember that?
Oh yeah, of course I do. Yeah.
He's giving a blow-by-blow report on how they're attacking the Iraqis. And the room was filled with people, watching that, and we were all like silent, and just falling on every single word he said. That was CNN in the old days. They don't do that stuff anymore. You know, I mean, it's to the point where all they have is these weirdos that get on there. And the guy who I can't believe they still have on, do you know who Scott Jennings is?
Yeah, I do.
Scott Jennings is a really good friend of Mark Reardon. Did you know this?
Yeah. Scott Jennings has some kind of ties to St. Louis, doesn't he?
Yes, and he's a big baseball fan. I believe he's a Cardinals fan and the whole bit. But he's the only guy on CNN that makes any sense anymore. And they have him on some roundtable all the time. And they keep saying, there's people saying Scott Jennings needs his own show on CNN. Because you know why they won't do it?
Well, because he contradicts their narrative.
Exactly. And the problem is, how can you be a journalistic? It's like the Washington Post. We've talked about this, the fact that the Washington Post is hemorrhaging readers, you know, even their online stuff. Obviously the print editions, it's tough, but nobody's watching this, nobody's paying attention to the Washington Post because most people know it's a biased source of news. You don't get the straight news. And I know what anybody's saying, you know, you go back to the days of Rush Limbaugh and you go back to the early days of Fox News on TV, people go, oh my God, it's right wing. Okay. So what does that tell you? If Fox News is determined to be right wing, what does that tell you about NBC, CBS, ABC? You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah. I don't think anybody, well, I can't say that because you and I don't have the numbers in front of us, but I bet any kind of credible public polling would show that. I mean, we all know that the number of people that say they trust national news media has plummeted over the last 15 years. And Trump helps with that.
And the interesting thing about that was there was a story just the other day. I read it again. We talked about this a couple weeks back about the fact that Barron Trump, and by the way, have you seen the pictures? It's actually sort of funny. Have you seen the pictures of Barron Trump at the 2017 inaugural and then Barron Trump at the 2025 inaugural? Have you seen those pictures where they're side by side? Oop, I think I lost you. Are you there, John? I think I lost you.
Yeah, I said okay. I haven't seen the side by sides. No.
Okay, he was a little kid back then. He's like 6'10" now. Have you seen? I mean, he's this tall, really good-looking guy. There have been numerous stories, at least ones I've read, talked about. They say the pivotal moment in the 2024 presidential campaign was, and this is what they attribute to Barron Trump telling his father, Dad, you got to do these podcasts. You got to go on Theo Von.
Joe Rogan,
You got to go on Joe Rogan. You got to go on and he says, that's what my friends watch. And Trump said, well, you're a young man. You know, I mean, Trump's no dummy. You're a young guy. I got to get these young men. And that's what he did. And who did Kamala Harris not even touch with a 20-foot borrowed pole? She wouldn't go near Joe Rogan. Remember the deal? Well, we're only doing an hour and you got to come to me. Joe Rogan's heavy enough to the point where, hey, you want to be in my show? Show up in my studio, right? I mean, he's gotten that cachet down to the point where you want to play my game, my rules, my ball, come and play in my studio, right? Isn't that pretty much the way it is with Joe now?
Yes, I think so. And I think the greatest contribution that Barron has made recently is the side-by-side of him next to Elon Musk. And have you seen that video clip?
Are you talking about the Nazi salute thing?
No, they're sitting next to each other on stage, and Elon is having the time of his life, and Barron is just sitting there with a plain look on his face and slowly clapping.
Well, once again,
and you know, the speculation is that Elon, of course, critics are going to say anything, but they're like, Elon looks so medicated. He looks like he's on some sort of drugs.
You're saying Barron looks like he's on some kind of drugs, or Elon?
No,
looks like...
Elon Musk looks like he's.
Well,
on some
this
sort
whole
of drugs.
crazy thing. I don't know if you've seen this. Is pretty funny. The whole Nazi salute thing. Have you seen this little montage somebody put together of all these other people with the exact arm out the same way? Oh, once again,
yeah.
I am a photographer. I'm a still photographer. I do video as well too, but I'm a still photographer. If you take, and I do this all the time. Like a couple of weeks ago, I went to the Cottleville Weldon Spring Chamber of Commerce, and I'm taking pictures that I'm going to put up on the web page. Okay, so when you're taking literally thousandths of a second, 250th of a second of people's lives, people's movements, sometimes they look pretty goofy. I mean, if you watch it in a movie or in a video where it's constant motion, you wouldn't pick it up. But when you get that split second frame that is saved and the look on people's faces, the eye movement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's to the point where that's the same thing with Musk. I mean, he's not doing a Nazi salute. Okay, to end our show on a good note this morning, okay, I have a very important topic that we're going to discuss. Okay, ready for this?
I'm ready for this.
A new mandate by Spirit Airlines. You ever flown Spirit before? Did I lose John again? Yeah, John, I'm losing you. Are you back again?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you dropped out there. Okay, have you ever flown Spirit Airlines before? I think I lost him again. Okay, I'll just go ahead with the story.
Brad, I'm here. I'm here, Brad. I have not flown Spirit Airlines.
Okay. Spirit Airlines is like the Greyhound bus of the air. Okay, that used to be the analogy that people talked about Southwest because it was the low fare airline. Well, Spirit is now sort of taken over that part of the spectrum of the people who fly. Spirit Airlines is no longer going to allow passengers with inappropriate clothing or tattoos to fly on their airlines. Are you ready for this?
Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
They've updated their policy to include a stricter dress code for passengers. The update, which became effective on January 22nd, which was Wednesday, says a passenger can be denied boarding or removed from a flight because of their clothing or offensive tattoos. The additions to the contract now specify that passengers who are inadequately clothed, such as wearing see-through clothing that exposes breasts, buttocks, or other private parts, are subject to being grounded. Okay? And the contract also makes clear that passengers may not be barefoot, which is a policy on other airlines as well. Another addition to Spirit's policy, the appearance of offensive tattoos is not a common cause for removal. The new policy comes after clothing infractions have reportedly caused issues for some Spirit passengers. Matter of fact, talks about the fact in October of last year, 2 women were removed from wearing crop tops on the airline. Last week, a man from Texas was removed from a Spirit flight for wearing what was deemed an offensive hoodie. The passenger eventually removed the hoodie, but was still escorted from the plane. So, my old boss, Karen Carroll, who I believe is now retired. She got out of the radio business, and believe it or not, she bought the local franchises for the, educational thing? The tutoring company, you know what I'm talking about? Can't remember the name.
Kaplan or is it Kaplan?
No.
Or Sylvan Learning Center?
Sylvan Learning Centers, yes. She bought the local franchise. She and her husband at the time, the husband she was married to, who actually was an executive from the Canadian Broadcasting Company, after you knew that.
Okay.
They bought all the Sylvan Learning Centers. Okay. In her younger years, Karen Carroll was a ground stewardess for TWA. Now, what is a ground stewardess? Do you know what that was?
Yeah, you've explained it a few times on the show. You go around with drinks while people are waiting to get on their flight, and you just make them happy.
Right. Nowadays, if you fly Southwest or Spirit, there's no such thing as that. It's like the cattle call. Okay, all the people with A boarding pass. Although is that officially gone yet? Do you know if that's kicked in? They're talking about getting rid of that. Which
on Southwest, yeah, they still have the A and B. They still have that seating. Yeah.
Well, they're getting rid of that because they're going to do assigned seating because that's the whole thing with the new CEO, which I think is ruining things. And you know what, John? The new CEO. Never once has he showed up on Thanksgiving or Christmas Day to help the guys
for a 7-minute photo op. I know, it's crazy.
To help the ramp agents load the baggage on the airplanes. I guess what's sort of funny to me is Spirit Airlines putting in a dress code. That's like Walmart putting in a dress code. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I get what, but do you think so? Just to cut to the chase here. Isn't this a really good, I look at this as this is a stunt. This is a way to get attention. Now, I'm more likely to think, hey, that's kind of funny. Hey, does Spirit Airlines exist? We're talking about Spirit Airlines now, where we would have never talked about Spirit Airlines previously, Well,
they've been in the news recently a lot because they were supposed to do the merger, I think, with JetBlue, and that fell apart. And I think Spirit just declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I think they're in bankruptcy. Okay.
But don't you think that, airlines doing anything to improve the experience, making fat people pay for 2 tickets. Why should I sit next to an oinker who's spilling into my seat? why doesn't the fat guy who's spilling into my seat, why doesn't he have to pay a fraction of my seat cost?
John, there's an interesting thing about that if you've ever flown in a small plane, like let's say it's like a 10-passenger plane or 12-passenger plane, the pilot, if he's doing his job right, will ask each passenger their weight. Do you know about this?
Yeah, I've happened to be on a corporate flight before on one of those type planes. Yeah.
And they ask you what your weight was, correct?
Yeah, except if you're a woman and then they just try to put their hands around your waist.
No,
and if you can't almost touch your hands, if you're a woman, you don't get to fly on that plane.
John with his typical
And it
BS.
should be done from behind because you want to simulate what you're going to be doing in the air.
Okay,
I mean,
John.
that's what I was told.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, we didn't get to talk about Senator John Kennedy doing an impassioned thing on the Senate floor about George Soros buying Odyssey, which was...
I saw that yesterday, Brad. I knew you would have an opinion on that one.
It was fascinating, and fascinating in the respect that John Kennedy talked about WWL, which is like the KMOX of New Orleans, a storied radio station which has an incredible history in New Orleans being owned. And the interesting thing, the point he made, we'll end the show by saying, just the other day when Biden was leaving office, he was railing against the oligarchs who are controlling the country. But yet he gave the congressional or whatever, the medal of the United States Medal of Freedom or whatever it was to George Soros, an oligarch. Talking about a hypocrite. You know what I mean? I mean, our former president.
I know. It's going to make it so sad when you announce that Soros has purchased the station.
Well, I don't think it's still been approved. I think it's still bouncing around. I think they're still technically in Chapter 11, which is weird, but that's a whole nother story. Okay, John, we're done.
It was a wonderful week with you, Brad, as always.
We will be back on Monday morning.